On July 28, 2021, residents were seeking respite from the heat with a pleasant dip in their community pool on Embassy Park Drive Northwest. Keeping a watchful eye was lifeguard Joshua Harris. Among those enjoying the water was Inga Williams. Suddenly and without warning, she suffered a medical emergency and lapsed into unconsciousness.
From where I was standing, it looked like she was diving, and she laid there motionlessly. She just didn't move. That's when I went in. She was in the deep end in 10 feet. There's something called a deep water submerge rescue, and that's what I did. After that, I pulled her out, got her to the side of the pool, performed CPR for like 5 to 7 minutes until EMS arrived and they took over.
Joshua's efforts bore fruit, and Miss Williams was revived. Shortly afterwards, Engine Company 20, EMS 5, and Medic 31 arrived on the scene. They took over care and transported Miss Williams to the hospital, where she was released 3 days later. Because of his prompt actions, a life was saved.
It was a responsibility, a job, and I did what I had to do.
He saved my life.
The U.S. is evacuating Afghans to Fort Lee, which is just due south of Richmond, Virginia. As of last week, there were a little more than 300 Afghans there, and a new plane is arriving every single day. Many of those individuals will resettle here in the D.C. area. 7 News arrived at Adventist Community Services of Greater Washington in Silver Spring today as people donated belongings for Afghans bound for the U.S.
We have been literally setting up apartments back to back.
Hannah Coyle-Pillay is a board member with Homes Not Borders. The nonprofit agency collects donated furniture and household items and uses it to set up apartments for refugee, special immigrant visa, and asylum-seeking people.
So we provide everything from couches to toothbrushes, toothpaste, toilet paper, all the hygiene items. So when they walk in, they feel like it is their home.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Adventist Community Services loaded Coyle-Pillay's pickup truck with donations this afternoon. Homes Not Borders is currently setting up 2 apartments per day in the D.C. area, and it's running out of stock.
They had nice homes. They're not refugees. They're SIV, Special Immigrant Visa. They were working for the U.S. government. They were getting paid in dollars. They had a beautiful home, a car that they could drive. And suddenly all of that is taken away, and they come here and they start from less than ground zero. I had an Afghan friend saying, I used to be on the giving end. Now I am on the receiving end.
Homes Not Borders told me that contrary to popular belief, people arriving in the United States on special immigrant visas have to refund the U.S. for their flights and rent, among other things.
Public health officials are expected to soon recommend COVID-19 booster vaccines for all Americans. Joining us this afternoon to talk more about that 3rd shot, why it might be necessary and for whom, the director of Malaria Vaccine and Challenge Unit at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. That's Dr. Kirsten Like. Dr. Like, nice to have you with us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
I think a lot of people have sort of resigned themselves to the fact that boosters are coming, and it sounds like now that that's the pipeline. We're seeing it in Israel and in some other places. Talk about the notion of boosters, why they make sense, and frankly, why we shouldn't be surprised. We get flu shots every year. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
That's exactly right. Obviously, we had no coronavirus vaccine prior to the pandemic. It's the common cold etiology. Although despite how frequent it was, we had never developed a cold vaccine. So we're learning as we go along about COVID-19 vaccines. And we've always suspected that we may need boosters, which is one of the reasons that all the trials are watching these antibodies and neutralizing antibodies in the study participants very closely.
Is it a case of boosters have a finite amount of destroying capability. They'll work on the virus up to a certain point, and then they need a little bit of a boost. Or is it that the vaccine, I beg your pardon, the virus in some cases, and Delta is a classic example, is mutating enough so that we need to fine-tune the vaccine itself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's really kind of two ways to think of it. Number one, when you get a boost, you're reminding your immune system, which we've trained to recognize COVID-19 through our initial COVID-19 vaccines. By boosting, usually you get a really exuberant response. So the height of your antibody, how high and how the amount of antibodies will improve. But in regards to the variants, we're talking about the breadth of the response or cross-covering other variants. And sometimes if you get a high enough response, you can kind of overcome some of the differences that occur with variants. And so it's a constant monitoring and a give and take to assess whether the original strain will be good enough, or if we have to broaden that to include some of these more serious variants like the Delta.
When you do a clinical study, you may have 1,000 participants or something like this.
Sure.
We're in the middle of a clinical study now that in which a couple of 100 million people have been vaccinated so far. So the patient population is very large. Is it easier then to draw conclusions given all that practical experience that researchers have?
Absolutely. So this is in real time, and oftentimes we're learning new findings at the same time that the general public is learning events. So obviously we have the experience of countries that have national health systems like Israel, Germany, and some of the other countries. Yeah. We can get a lot of data from those countries and then apply it to ours. But at the same time, we're running a major trial here in the United States across 10 centers looking at boosters. It started just after Memorial Day, and we hope to have results in the next few weeks. So, alongside all of the worldwide results, we're also reporting and studying this at home.
It also seems to me too, and you can tell me if I'm on track with this, that research institutions are doing a tremendous amount of other studies on this vaccine and its response. And as a result, we've got lots of data here, but we also have a lot of other data as well, so that our whole the sphere of knowledge that we have here is bigger, it seems to me, than it would ordinarily be, and again over a relatively short period of time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's unprecedented. Pretty much everyone in infectious disease is refocusing towards COVID right now. And even as you introduced me, I'm the director of the Malaria Challenge Unit. But we've been doing COVID almost exclusively the last year and a half. So all resources and attentions are being poured into the vaccine development and also looking at how can we prevent COVID, how do we treat people with COVID. So really every permutation that you can imagine regarding this pandemic.
We're bumping up against the tyranny of the clock, but I have a quick question to follow up on that. Yes, you run the Malaria Vaccine and Challenge Unit there, but is it likely that some of the things that we've gained from studying coronavirus will have applications in malaria, other infectious diseases?
Absolutely. mRNA is going to blow away the future of vaccines. Also, infusing monoclonal antibodies, which we do for COVID, is really going to revolutionize a lot of illnesses and diseases across the world.